Meeting is now live streaming. So hello, welcome everyone on Facebook and YouTube and jewishlive.org. This is our American Mussar weekly community meeting. Although at the end of today's call, after we sign off, I will continue. We did a poll for a new name for this get together. So I will roll out the new name and also show you two different images. I would love to get some feedback. Once a marketer, always a marketer. So I'd love to get your feedback on some of these prototype images. Right now, we're going to start a little bit differently than we have from some of our past meetings. We're going to get to the meditation a little bit later because I want to start in a slightly different place. So can you see the slides here? Yes? Okay, wonderful. With two things. First, I just want to remind us of our journey where we've come. We started on March 19th, just as almost a spontaneous get-together to see how Mussar could help us cope with the pandemic. And then that has turned into a weekly meeting where we've been going soul trait by soul trait through the ones. So far, it's the ones that I've covered in the book. So we've started with humility, moving through these others. And today we're and the blog post that I wrote to kind of, are we having to face too much truth in this pandemic? I would like to begin with a discussion prompt, and the way this works is that when that comes up, I'll put the prompt out and you can just unmute yourself and share your thoughts. And again, this will have some meditation coming up after that. And toward the end of the call, you'll have an opportunity to other person one-on-one. Okay. My theme for this week is the title of one of my favorite books by Rabbi Alan Lew, Blessed Memory. And it's This Is Real and You Were Completely Unprepared. If you're not familiar with this book, it goes through the cycle of the high holidays, beginning with Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th day of the month, the Jewish month of Av. It's the anniversary of the destruction of both temples and many other calamities of Jewish people. And it goes through the other holidays through Sukkot. And at one point, he tells a story, almost like a dream, where someone walks into the synagogue on, I think it was Rosh Hashanah, and there's two giant books, the book of life and the book of death. And there's a voice intoning names, and the pages of the book, one book or the other rustles, and the person panics and says, oh my God, this is real. I thought it was all metaphor, but this really is like a moment of life and death, and it's real, and I'm completely unprepared. And I felt a little bit like that this week because we've been in this pandemic's been with us for a couple of months. We've been in lockdown for me, it's probably pushing on 2 months now. But I had two really big sort of shocks this week. One was a cancellation of a Torah camp that I was going to, and I knew this wasn't gonna be around. I mean, I knew when I signed up a month ago that it was gonna be canceled, but still, it really hit me kind of hard. And then I found out, I've shared this on Facebook, so in case people haven't seen it, I found out the next day that my mom has COVID and she's in the hospital. And so I know many of you will want to share your concerns and your prayers, and I appreciate that. And if you want to, but we don't need to spend our time here focusing on that, but you're very welcome to write to me afterwards. And I know how much you care. But again, she's in a nursing home. She's not in great health. I knew this was theoretically possible, but I somehow thought that, she was in a small place. She'd been okay. Syracuse didn't have a lot of cases, but boom, this happened. And once again, I felt completely unprepared. So she's holding her own. She's in the hospital. She's, had a fever. She's, but she's holding her own for now. So But I want to kind of know, so those were sort of two truths, which kind of I hadn't really been tuned into. Those were a possibility, but I'd like to know kind of what does this bring up for you? This phrase, "This is real," and you were completely unprepared.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
This is Linda.
Hi,
And
Linda.
Greg, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your mom.
Thank you.
And I can go through my day doing what I've been doing for the past month, reading and wandering around, and then all of a sudden it'll hit me why I'm doing that. And it'll seem more real than it did before. And I guess it's some kind of defense mechanism that lets me go back to wandering around. So I've heard other people say that they can't stay with the reality too long, but when it hits, it hits.
Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
Hey, this is Moshe. So I'll say that, you know, it's a great book, and Alan Liu just really nailed it. And that's just a great expression that conveys this sense of the magnitude of what it is we're facing. I think an appropriate response is awe, which I believe is a midah. But, and yirah, which is this combination of like awe and fear at the same time. So those are all, it's just, he really conveys that beautifully in that expression that you used. I also want to say though, just slightly related, and it's related to the topic of this program today. It's hard for me to say that it's possible for there to be too much truth. You know, it's possible maybe there are too many facts that we're bombarded with right now. But I think the truth is that we are facing something that's just really that we just need to open ourselves to fully.
Thank you, Moshe. Other thoughts?
It really hits home when somebody you know is struck with it. One of my former students she's recovering. She's doing fine. She's back at work, but she was very sick with it. And then I found out that my brother has been having fevers of unknown origin. They couldn't, you know, which he's had before. But of course, he went and got tested. He was negative. But had he not been, there's nothing I can do. He lives in Santa Cruz. I can't go over there. He can't come over here, obviously, because I'm so much at risk. I can't risk anything. And I'm still very worried about him because I don't know why he's ill. No, they don't know. He's been to doctors. He's had all kinds of tests, and they don't know.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, scary. And he's my only family, really, that I'm close to. I mean, that I have in the area that I'm close to. We're kind of it for each other.
Well, I'm glad he tested negative.
Yeah, me too. I hope he continues to.
Yes.
Uriela here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ariella. Hi.
Hi, Greg. I'm very sorry to hear that you experience it close. For me, I don't know. I've entered this space of that. I'm so aware of my own mortality here. I have to be in the age group where they say that that's the highest percentage. So I am being careful and doing everything which they say you're supposed to do, hopefully. But the thing that I am doing is I'm aware of all the people that I love, and I want, and I just staying in connection with them in different ways. I have figured out different ways how to be connected to them so that especially my kids and especially my grandkids. And there are some, good things coming out of that. We have more honest conversations than we've ever had. And my grandkids are talking with me 2 times a week. We have a Zoom call. And I just think, what I want them to have from me, the legacy, I need to give it now. So that's what I'm doing. But maybe I am a little bit in denial about, how bad things could be. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Uriel. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of facets of the truth of where we are right now, because there's the isolation, there's the fear for people we care about, or the fear for humanity in general. And there are also new opportunities that are coming up, like in that last example, for additional closeness with family members. And also I'm hearing a sense of, almost a little bit of a sense of urgency, like the time is now, where we need to, pass on our legacy, perhaps, because we really don't know what the future holds. And of course, we never know what the future holds. But now, in a time like this, it is particularly salient when the real danger is higher.
Greg, I'd like to interject here and say that I really identify with what you're saying, this idea of a connection to many people and relatives and grandchildren in this case, and disconnection at the same time, and wanting to bridge that gap. And what does it mean as a grandmother in your family to actually not being able to see the grandchildren and still be the elder in the family, so to support them in many ways. And it's interesting, the whole idea of being prepared to the role and not being prepared to the role at the same time. Again, connection and disconnection. And I recently started to work on a mindfulness group for grandmothers that will actually, as elders, will lead or help lead the challenges in the families from a distance, but at the same time empowering the families. So so it's an interesting journey.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful group, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
I find that it's very easy for me to flounder. I have too much unstructured time on my hands. I'm working on my novel, and it's very easy for me to not work on it. It's very easy for me to cook. I'm living with 2 men, my brother and my husband, both of whom have serious health issues. And, it's up to me to keep a lot of the stuff together. I mean, I do the meals and most of the cleaning. And it's easy for me to put off what doesn't need to be done today. And then I feel bad about it.
Well, thank you, Janet. Thank you. I listen with an open heart, and I think, without giving advice, I'll just share a perspective that I've seen for many times. And one of the things that came up last week was this can be a time where it's just okay to be, and it's just okay to survive. Last week, we talked about the phrase, the first mission is survival, where, it's okay to just take care of ourselves and to take care of other people right now. And it's, so I just wanted to share that with you.
That's very
As
helpful.
workaholic, yeah, you're welcome. As a workaholic, I know very much what
Yeah.
it feels like to
And-
feel like I should be getting more done, but but we can recognize the truth of those feelings too. Is it really true that I should be able to get more done now? Well, I don't know. I got a lot on my mind. There's a lot going on these days.
Yeah, I would like to share in this situation what I experienced. I will try to make it as short as possible. Basically, in 2018, December 31st, we went to movie theater. I ended up with pain in my back. It was so huge. I went to the hospital. They tested me for this and that. It's New Year's Eve in this country. So the doctor came back at 11:30 and said, well, how you feel? I feel good. I'm ready to go home. I said, well, you know what? I have a good news, bad news. So I wanted to know the bad news. He said, you can die any second.
Oh my God.
They said, what's the good news? Well, you are not dead. So they transferred me to another hospital, and they found actually what I had, like 2.5-inch aneurysm on my main aorta,
Oh boy.
just above the kidneys, underneath the heart. So they did a 7-hour surgery, 6.5-hour surgery. So what I've learned, actually, what the whole story is about this, that when they rolled me into the surgery room, they put me in the epidural for a pain, and they were preparing me, kind of very stupid. I counted 14 people. And you are laying naked on this tiny table, and then there are 3 lamps above. So then it hit me as they gave me the sedative to sleep. But that's not the sleep they put you in that when you go for checkups. Actually, it's deeper. So I had about 5-10 seconds to think. So it hit me, what if this is it? What if I just die? So what would be the regrets I have? So at that moment, my daughter-in-law was 7 months pregnant with my granddaughter. We knew there's a baby coming. The second one, the first one was a boy. So the only thing that hit me was that I would not see the granddaughter. Everything else was, I'm okay to go. So, and then I fell asleep. Then I hear my name, Mr. Kovac, open your eyes. I'm thinking, well, I don't think so. It's they talk, God taught me that way. So I opened my eyes. So I'm rolling in my bed in a hospital. Wow, so I realized I'm alive. So since then I'm recovering, but I was at the door of death. The risk wasn't that high, but I could have died. And like they had to replace my aorta with this plastic tube.
Wow.
And I did. So that's when you are using a year off. I'm fearful, but I'm trusting the God. And then the nurse helped me the previous night before the surgery, said, Mr. Kovac, these doctors know what they are doing. How about you just focus on how you will recover at the end? So that's what I did. And here I am. I'm very thankful. I'm in 18 months post-surgery. So it's okay. And if you have any fear, it's probably, for me at least, it's that, did I have a fulfilling life? Did I live fully or I live partially? So now I learned that while I've lived fully life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your story, Janos, and I'm so glad that you're still here. Now, we've heard a variety of perspectives, but I know one of the perspectives that we heard is sometimes, when we take on the sort of fullness of what's going on, it can be pretty overwhelming. And I know when I face that, I feel like it's a little bit below the camera, but like in the pit of my belly, I really feel a tightness, and that's where the fear fits me. So there's a meditation that I sometimes do where I'll put my hands like over that spot. I'll sort of hold them up here, and I'll sort of look down and almost visualize that kind of anxious energy. So I invite you, we're going to begin our meditation today by doing that. If you do have a spot where you feel the anxiety, just sort of put your hands out and just kind of hold it there. And then close your eyes. Maybe visualize that anxiousness there and feel it sort of contained by your hands. And now let your attention, while still holding that there, let your attention come to the breath. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, peace. Shema, peace. When we're in Shema, we're listening. We're listening with a peaceful heart. Without judgment, without reaction. We're listening with a peaceful heart. We can be open to what's going around us, and we can begin to bring our hands together and allowing that anxiousness to fade. Shema, shalom, peace. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Friends, this is the part as we begin to get ready to start to investigate the soul trait of truth. We begin with one of our 4 assumptions. And the one today, it's different than the one that was in the book, is that we were driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And again, the evil inclination, that's not sort of murderous evil. It's more like our survival impulses, our selfish impulses, our emotionality, our anger, our sexuality. And these things are not bad in of themselves unless they're unconstrained. And that's where the social impulses of the good inclination can help guide the evil inclination. I want to share another quote from Rabbi Alan Lew, who defines the evil inclination as the tumultuous whirlwind of impulses and dysfunctions that prevents us from doing what we should be doing. And one of the dangers, I think, is during these times of high stress is that the evil inclination, it's always looking for a path in. It's if we're facing kind of an overwhelming, truth that can be overwhelming, the evil inclination would like nothing more than to kind of get a foothold in and to turn what is a stressful situation into a really, could be into a more destructive direction. So I'd like to pause and get some reactions. Do you buy this argument that the evil inclination is always sort of looking for an opportunity to kind of sabotage us and to turn what might be a appropriately stressful or sad situation into something which becomes a dysfunctional situation?
Well, I don't know if I go along with the personification, the anthropomorphism of the evil inclination. But I think that when we are in a stress situation, things can come up and we say, oh, well, I'll just do that because it's expedient. It'll take care of me, and to hell with everybody else.
Mm.
So
Thank you, Carol.
I think.
Shelley here.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi. Again, sorry for your mother. I'm praying for her.
Thank you.
You know, my friend comes up with a lot of stress of lately because, you know, he's worried about the COVID and how it's affecting everybody. And we were having this discussion the other day because he was in a moment of fear, which I do believe, you know, once fear gets into us, or if you want to call it the evil incarnate, we have a choice on how we handle it. And so I always say to him, you know, you have a choice to go in that downward spiral with fear and get yourself more into fear, or you can be thankful that you're having that experience and you can say, thanks, I don't need this. I'm going to go back to the positive side. And I said, you know, a lot of times we always, when we're afraid to be happy, I think sometimes it's easier to be scared, frustrated than it is to take that moment of breath and go, okay, thank you for showing me this fear. Thank you for giving me this sensation. But instead of going into it, I'm going to try and find a positiveness and pull myself back out. And so that's what I tend to do. I tend to breathe it out and always say thank you, you know, to God, and you know, for giving me the ability to not go into it.
Well, thank you, Shelley. You bring up a couple of wonderful points, and this idea of choice is one of the central ideas of Mussar. There's the Hebrew word for it is a behira point, or a choice point. And the more mindful we are, the more we can recognize that we do have choices. And for me, like today, I was faced with the choice. Do I spend every minute reading about every single detail of COVID in Syracuse where my mother lives, and every website about, you know, plasma transfusion treatments, and try to figure out if they're doing that at the hospital or this or that? Or I could try to go about my life here and do other things. And certainly, like, my panic and fear wants to take me into doing this, but reading the sixth story about, you know, what's going on with COVID in Syracuse or in New York or in Singapore, you know, that's a rabbit hole which could consume my whole day and was just going to feed more anxiety and more of, that's kind of what, you know, again, to use what could be anthropomorphizing or an analogy, that's what the evil inclination wants, or that's what our amygdala would be more than happy to just keep pumping more and more adrenaline and stress hormones in. Yeah, so anyone else have a situation where maybe they've found themselves with a choice point where they could have kind of gone down, you know, a whirlwind of impulses, but maybe found a different way to address the situation lately?
Well, I had something today. A friend sent me a copy of her email conversation with another friend. This other friend had sent an email to a large number of people. It was all like in bold letters in blue, and it was about something about some scientist who was sure that the coronavirus was cooked up in a lab. You know, it was like germ warfare, and you know, and then he was sending it out to people and saying, what do you think of this? But also in big letters at the bottom, this is like, send this to everybody you know, and you know, pretty much. So my friend, who's a nurse practitioner, responded, said, this is not true, because I mean, just because it's a worldwide pandemic doesn't mean it was cooked up in a lab, because they found that there's receptors here. She gave a scientific explanation. They found receptors that, that this germ or whatever virus latches onto, and that's why it's so destructive, and blah, blah, blah. And so his response to her was like, very negative. And so, of course, like, I probably shouldn't have. I got into it because it wasn't even sent to me originally. And I said to both of them, I said, well, I agree with Susie, my friend, and she's the scientist here, and knowledge is not the same as opinion. And I said something which really was really bad. I said, and he was very insulted. I said, and don't go peddling this story around, because it's just in this week's Parsha. Don't be a peddler of gossip to my people, something like that. So of course he was very, very offended and disappointed in me, and I think he said something that he thought that her answer had venom in it, something like that. I don't know. So we went back and forth several times, and then, and I said, I don't know what I said anymore, but I ended by saying, let's not discuss this anymore. It really doesn't make any difference where this originated. It's here. And I'm sorry if I offended you, and I was harsh, my bad, whatever, I apologize.
Well, thank you, Joanne, for sharing that, because I think that's a story that I certainly relate to. And I've seen Facebook posts of, it's the 5G, which is causing, coronavirus, and people that I know that are, and this is one of the real complexities of the truth, because there are things that are sort of verified scientifically, and then there's like people really get emotionally invested in the things they believe, which may or may not. And one of the quotes I'm going to share later is, don't let anything come out of your mouth that you're not sure is completely true, which is from the book Heshbon HaNefesh. And today it's like, well, I don't know if this is true or not, or I think it's true, or it fits my worldview for this to be true, and so I'm going to broadcast it world, and we'll let the crowd jury of whether this is true or not. And there's a lot of destruction caused by that, a lot of other things. So yeah, that's the complexity. You are faced with the decision, do you jump into this or not? And that's not always easy. I have a volunteer to read the second quote from Rabbi Alan Lew. Maybe someone we haven't heard from yet.
I could read it. We can strengthen the good. Well, somebody else can do it. We can strengthen the good inclination through spiritual work, meditation, and acts of loving kindness, such that over time we become better able to resist the seductive and seditious voice of the evil inclination. True.
Thank you. So what is Rabbi Lew, what point is he making here? What is he suggesting?
I feel my first instinct, my first response to that quote actually doesn't answer your question, Greg. So I'm sorry if I'm going to veer a little bit off the track there, but
it's okay. Very Jewish of you. That's cool. I don't know whether you're Jewish or not, but it's an appropriate response.
Most definitely.
So, okay.
Not in name anymore, but actually grew up a Weinstein. I saw somebody else here as a Weinstein. But for me, at least my evil inclination most of the time is not seductive, right? Like I'm not like, I don't get necessarily sucked into or, seduced into making the wrong choices. They just happen, right? Like my evil inclination works in my subconscious, and it just comes out before I can even catch it. So I think, at least for me, that doesn't resonate for me because that's,
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah.
This is Moshe. I'm sorry.
Yes. Moshe.
I think I agree with Wendy that the terms, you know, seductive or seditious are kind of like Carol was saying, anthropomorphize, somebody else, they're kind of anthropomorphic, you know, characterizations, but it's a tendency. And I think you're right on that it's a matter of choice, you know, what we choose, what tendency or whatever you call it, we tend to choose in that moment. And you see how it plays itself out in, you know, false reports and fake news and just enormous, just how just that simple choice that each of us has on a personal level can play itself out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly times when we can make a choice, and there are other times, and maybe this is what Wendy was saying, but that was reminding me of times for me where I just get mad and then boom, I'm like raising my voice and that sort of thing. And I think what Rabbi Lou is offering is like some alternatives, some counter, you know, they can be some health promoting habits, because if the evil inclination, those tendencies tend to map to like the amygdala part of the brain, and the good inclination tends to map to the prefrontal cortex, and those two actually use opposition to each other. And things like meditation or acts of loving kindness strengthen the prefrontal cortex, and they can, Rabbi Per might say, give us a little bit of extra space. So like today, you know, I did the meditation a little bit later to see if it might be helpful after we talked about some stressful things. Did that help sort of calm and recenter? I don't know, did anybody feel a little bit more calmed and recentered after talking about something that was the stressful beginning?
Now, one of the things I wanted to, I'm sorry, someone else has the floor. Okay, can I speak?
I mean, are you answering my question?
Yeah, one of the things
Then you may speak.
Okay, I'm looking at both the what causes the evil inclination or how it manifests and how to counter it. I'm reminded a little bit of the opposite of John Dewey's learning by doing. How about learning by not doing? I don't mean by not doing acts of loving kindness, but by giving your brain the opportunity to rid itself of the impulses, to rid itself of the CNN, to rid itself of the I can't be doing this, I should be doing this, and give it a rest.
I love that.
I
Yes,
find that as
thank
a
you.
writer, sometimes I work in the garden, not thinking about what I should be doing. Things come to me.
Right.
Mhm.
Those
Sitting at
shoulds.
the computer, sorry.
Yeah. Carol.
Yeah, I wanted to say that what I think Rabbi Lou is saying is that you have a choice, and the easier choice is to do things that are good, because when you do things that are good, you spread that energy from yourself to others, and others receive that energy in a way that makes them grateful that you have extended some goodness toward them. It makes them want to do goodness for someone else. And so that beautiful arc of goodness can share from 1 to 4 to 16. And in a perfect world, it could cover the earth. But it has to start with one person. And the more you do good, the more seductive it becomes, because it makes you feel good.
Thank you, Carol.
This is Elizabeth. I'm still struggling sometimes with what's Yetzer Hara and what is Yetzer Tov, in the sense that I may be faced with a choice point where it's going to be good for some aspects of it, but not so good for other aspects of it. So I don't see it as a complete dichotomy. I think it's also linked to the circumstances and what is expected from you versus what is good for you. So I'm still struggling with this language that is, this is good, this is bad. Sometimes it's not that clear to me.
These are very complicated topics, and I had intended us to spend about 15 minutes on it. We've spent almost the whole time. I am going to want to move on because I want to set us up for our one-on-one conversation, which we got cut a little bit short last time. So I apologize if not everyone, but I will hang out after 5 if people want to continue the conversation.
Excuse me, Greg. This is Wendy, and I just wanted to go back to answer your question about the timing of the meditation.
Okay.
I thought it was really a key to a really useful tool, especially in light of what we're discussing, how the pandemic is actually causing us some problems. So what I thought was when we got together, we're kind of apart, separated, and then we start talking, and we become a kind of a group in like one. And then when we meditate like that, I felt like it was a much more meaningful tool, at least at this time. So sometimes in the beginning, it can draw you into the group, but at this time, it was there was a sweetness to it. And I really appreciated the timing, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. So we're going to begin our transition to truth. And I feel myself like getting a little maybe evil inclination-y or itchy to kind of get through the stuff, you know, and I'm like, oh, I got to get through the stuff. And maybe I'm not giving proper air to Wendy's comment because the meditation, it can be something which is circumstance independent. You know, it's something that we can do to just kind of calm ourselves, whatever might be going on, bringing ourselves into a meditation or an act of kindness or a walk around the block and give us a little bit more time to sort things out, whatever the circumstance might be, and to help us pick something which might be more nurturing to others or help sort through some of the complexities that Elizabeth was alluding to. Now, okay, now that I've given proper airing to that, I'll come back to the agenda. And what struck me, and we won't discuss this, but just something which I think is a powerful perspective is this idea is that when we're sort of focused on the evil inclination, we can't see the truth. You know, like this person who was so focused on the idea that this was a bioweapon. And maybe it is, you know, who knows? But one could make an argument that when we're very emotionally invested in something, we're not going to be open to other types of opinions or perspectives that may be out there. Our spectrum of truth, on the one side, you know, having too little truth can really erode trust. You know, I think it has been very hard to deal with this pandemic when we're not getting trustworthy information from those people at the top of the government. And that is undermining, in my opinion, how we're responding as a country. I think that the danger of too much truth is, like here in this example, I'm saying hurtful speech, you know, where you're, you know, I was always like a tell it like it is sort of person. And sometimes in doing that, I really hurt people unnecessarily. I didn't need to give them my unvarnished truth of a situation. And, you know, back to my personal situation, just like the truth of, oh, my mom is sick, you know, that was hurtful. I don't know that it was too much, but the truth can be painful when we really allow ourselves to to experience it. And sometimes we need to experience that pain. But it's also okay to, you know, deal it out kind of in slower ways. So all of this, I think, will now has us set up for our, and I apologize for not having kind of discussion of these points. The thing I wanted to talk about with our partners today is what's called executing the judgment of truth, which is looking at the truth from the perspective of everyone involved. You know, we could be in a conversation and each walk away from that conversation with very different perspectives about what we talked about. There isn't like one objective situation. You know, I guess we could go back and watch the recording of today's, but often life is in a gray area. And based upon my history, I'm going to interpret things in a certain way. And if you have a very different history, you're going to interpret them in another way. So when you get together with your partner, there's two things. You know, one is maybe talk about the fullness of truth of where you are today. And that could include, you know, both some positives and some more negative things, you know, and I say those with quotes. And then maybe if you have time, you know, is there someone in your life where maybe, I might do better to try to see the truth from their perspective. And if I try to see it from their perspective, that might bring some enrichment to my own life. Okay, so I am to now, uh-oh, I've lost like my Zoom page here. Uh-oh, how do I stop my share?
Greg, Bill has a question about the breakout group.
Yes.
Activity. Yeah, go Bill.
Hi, Bill here. So I was reading through on the laptop the items that you were going through, and I have kind of a point of confusion, and that is that I'm confused as to how we're trying to utilize the word truth here in terms of the way it frequently gets characterized is you have, if I have 2 dogs and add 2 more dogs, I have 4 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a factual truth. Or you have a much different question, such as, is the account of the creation of Earth in Genesis literally true? A kind of a whole different way of looking at it. And so I'm confused as to how are we defining that word for us to have this discussion? Are we using it as a synonym or a conclusion or an opinion based upon whatever your knowledge of A, B, C, and D facts are? So I don't know, maybe you could help me out that way, because I'm having a hard time being able to kind of analyze your questions and try to address them without a better.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I understand. And yeah, this idea of truth can get really complicated because there's one axis which I tend to think of as falsehood. So if you say 2 + 2 = 5, that is falsehood. You know, if you say, you know, you say something which is verifiably incorrect, that's something that you could say, okay, that's false. But for most things in this world, there's not like one objective truth. Like most things, you know, like why did they pass this stimulus bill? Well, you know, I don't, you know, there are people that all kinds of different motivations. And so people are going to bring their own bias to that. So what I'm talking about for your situation is just kind of share where you're at. And, you know, if you think about like, you know, our political situation, well, the stimulus bill was really, from one perspective, just a giveaway to multimillionaires and corporations. And from another perspective, it was, this is the best way we can get the economy going again, right? So, and different people may feel very strongly, oh, My name is not up. I'm Jewish Live today. Hello. You can just call me Mr. Live. Um, but so I guess, you know, when you're with your partners, just kind of share where you're at and sort of like what you're noticing about where you are. And then if there's someone in your life, like maybe that relative who has a different political perspective, or, you know, my teenage daughters, they see the world very differently from me and see the shutdown very differently than I do, and their priorities are very different. So trying to see the world through their eyes helps me relate to them a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to create the rooms now, and you should see a button that says join your room. So please click joining that room, and remember to write down people's names if you want to stay in touch with them. Okay. Janet, do you see, you're looking frozen there. Okay. Nancy, do you see your room somewhere? Okay, I am going to reassign then. Oh, Nancy has disappeared. That means that she has gone too. So if, for those of you that are watching on Facebook or on YouTube Live right now, what I do is I share an additional teaching to give you something to watch while everyone else is in their Hevruta study. That means that I am going to once again share my screen. And there's a couple of teachings that I can go through here. One of them is this idea that the Hebrew word for truth is emet, which is spelled Aleph, Mem, Taf. And that's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So that means that like only the divine has access to the beginning, middle, and end of everything. Now, you may not be sure about the divinity. You might be an atheist. You might not believe in God. So what I'd like you to hold on to is this idea is that a human is, we are never going to objectively know the truth of everything. Kind of to Phil's question before, almost nothing in life comes into this 2 + 2 = 5. Now, unfortunately, we have a government and leadership which is peddling falsehood and saying things that are not true, and people may disagree. Again, that's my truth, but there are a lot of people who will be like, no, he's just setting the record straight. So even something like that can be something which should be objective suddenly becomes subjective because there's so much dislike and distrust between people. And I'm hoping my later slide will, if I'm remembering it correctly. Okay, so this was about speech. So to close on that other point, it relates to what I was saying before, which maybe people in the breakout groups are talking about, which is understanding the judgment of truth, trying to really understand what that person's perspective is. We can't get people, if someone has an emotional attachment to an idea, you're not going to be able to get them to change their mind. But what you might be able to do is to understand them a little bit more and not to dismiss them as bad or evil. And I'm here talking about kind of our fellow citizens or other people in our lives. So we'll put a pin in that and we'll kind of set that one aside. I think these are two really important points about truth. And unfortunately, we won't have time to cover them very deeply. One we talked about before is you can make sure that you're not part of the problem. There's all kinds of crap about the virus that's going on. You know, it's going to kill everybody. This thing is a cure. You know, and when you are liking something on Facebook, sharing something on Facebook, even bringing up a topic with people in your family, are you really sure that what you're saying is true? And we can even go a step beyond that and say, is this going to be a positive contribution? And that's what this second quote is about. A bride should always be complimented as beautiful. This was actually the only fight I had with my editor for the book, because she hated this. She said, this is reinforcing the patriarchy, and this is reinforcing the idea that women are only valued for their beauty. I was really shocked by that, because I thought, you know, that just didn't occur to me. And I realized that she was correct. And the way that I wrote about this and interpreted it in the book is the idea is that a wedding is a time of joy. And if we're going to be making a comment about how the bride looks, or the groom's tuxedo, or their taste in China, or something along those lines, we could really hurt someone's feelings, and we could really detract from the joy of the day. So before we start sharing our truth with other people, we should think about the impact of that truth on that other person. And even if it might be objectively correct, like even if everybody in the room said, yeah, this bride is not very attractive and she has all these scars on her face or what have you, it's still not appropriate to share that truth. Or as I would like to say to my daughters when they were young and they'd be fighting and they would say something mean to the other one, he'd say, well, it was true. And I'd say, yeah, it is true, but that doesn't mean you need to say it. If it's really going to be hurtful to your sister, it's probably something that's better not shared. Okay, so with that, I am going to stop the share and bring everyone back together. Okay, so the rooms are closed, and within a minute, people are going to start to come together. So I invite you to think about, a situation in your life where maybe you've given someone too much truth, or maybe you've withheld the truth because you've been afraid you were going to hurt someone's feelings, but in the process, you didn't share with them something that they really needed to know. Sometimes it can be helpful for people to give, to understand if they've done something that's hurtful. Okay, we got Carol and Leslie are back. Hey, Leslie, how are you today?
Yeah, Janos had to go.
Hanging in there.
Okay, that's good. We missed Janos. Yes, we're right up at the end of our time here.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have 3 seconds, so people are going to be coming back in a big whoosh. And here we are back together again. So we're going to have a closing meditation in just a sec. And then if any of you want to hang out and see the new name and to give me feedback on the image that I'll use on the website, I would love to have you. Anyone like to make a closing thought or two about maybe something, an insight you had during your pair sharing?
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about was choosing to be positive, that we can go to that dark place, but sometimes we have to, but we don't have to stay there. We go to that dark fear place, that grief, that sorrow, whatever it is, but we don't have to stay there. We can visit and then come back.
Yeah.
And that I have an acquaintance who is she's been very negative. You know, she's whining and crying on social media about how she can't go to the water park with her daughter and stuff like that because it's, you know, her daughter's a teenager. So I'm sure it's very difficult. And I tried to put myself in her shoes, knowing that she is not putting herself in my shoes, by the way, this I know. And just to be grateful for what I do have, just, you know, that's what's getting me through, is looking at what is good in my life.
Thank you, Carol. And I think you bring up an important point about truth. At all we have, that's not the full truth.
No.
You know, we can get caught up in all of that, but that is not the totality. Even in those really dark moments, we can't even imagine things being different, but understanding that that's not the full story. Thank you. Maybe one more person.
I was talking to Ilana, and Ilana's from Tucson, Arizona, and I'm from New York City in Queens, New York. And talking about the differences in truth, I was talking about how life was over here, and Ilana was talking about experiences of people over where she lives, and it's, you know, I'm out here and I see what I see, and many people are over there in that community and they see what they see, and it's a bit of a difference, different perspective, and we act in certain ways from the reaction, you know, of our environment, which is, you know, out here in New York City, it's at least it's scary and it's dangerous because it affects friends.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Okay, well, I would love to continue, and we will, I will hang around, but I want to be respectful of the time too. So we're going to do a very, very short closing meditation. So please, once again, close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And recognize, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And the truth I'd like you to remember today is that we're all created in the image of the divine. That even if you're not sure about the divinity, there's a common spark of humanity that exists within all of us. And that while we've had hurts and experiences which get in the way, at our core, we are okay as we are today. And we have opportunities, and these challenges are just our opportunities to grow and opportunities to ask for help and to connect with others. Now tilt your head back and smile. Let's end with a moment of gratitude for this hour of companionship on our journey today. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you all so much for sharing this journey with me today. I really appreciate having this time with all of you every week. Now, if anyone would like to stay to further the conversation, I'm going to end the live